What if I told you that Ferrari has found the perfect way to break into the new era of Formula One, just when Mercedes thought it had everything under control? Because while everyone is looking at the initial results, there is something that is happening in silence, a hidden advantage approved by the FIA that could change everything in the middle of 2026. Ferrari is not as far away as it seems. In fact, it is only 2% behind the best engine on the grid, and that has opened a door for them that no other team can take advantage of in the same way. A legal improvement at the exact moment, and with a clear objective to erase Mercedes' advantage in one fell swoop. The question is, are we about to see the biggest shift of power in modern Formula One? Ferrari is not where it seems, and that is the first big mistake that everyone is making when analyzing this beginning of the new era. Because if you stay only with the results, with the points, or with the victories of Mercedes, you are missing the real story that is being built below the surface. The dominant narrative says that Mercedes has started 2026 with a clear advantage, imposing its engine as the absolute reference on the grid. And yes, that's true, but only half true. Because this superiority does not come from total control of the car, but from a very specific factor, the power unit. It is there where they are making the difference, it is there where they are building their advantage, and it is precisely there where Ferrari has already detected the problem. Ferrari is not lost. Ferrari is incomplete. And this changes absolutely everything. Because when you analyze the real performance of the Italian car, you realize something key. The car works. It works on curves, it works on management, it works on general balance. Even their own drivers have made it clear that they can squeeze the car in many phases, but there is a limit that they cannot exceed. They can't go any further in a straight line. They cannot fight on equal terms when the engine comes into play. And that is not a sensation. It is a reality that has already been evident on the track. This leads us to a brutal conclusion. Ferrari already has the basis to win, but is missing the most important piece. And this is where the ADUO comes in. Most fans still don't understand the magnitude of this regulation, but is literally a lifeline designed by the FIA to prevent 2014 history from repeating itself. At that time, Mercedes built an advantage that was impossible to achieve for years because there was no real way to react. Now it does exist, and Ferrari has managed to position itself at exactly the right point to take advantage of it. It is no coincidence that Ferrari's deficit is around 2%. It is just the minimum threshold that activates this possibility. It's like they're on the perfect border, close enough to compete and far enough to receive regulatory help. And that means that Ferrari has something that Mercedes does not: authorized room for improvement within the season. While Mercedes has to protect what it has already built, Ferrari can evolve aggressively without breaking the regulations. And that in a Formula One as closed as the current one is a gigantic strategic advantage. But there is something even more important the moment, because this improvement will not come at any point in the year. It is planned to come into play starting in Canada. And that is not a minor detail. It means that Ferrari will have half a season to analyze, adjust, understand the car, and then launch a direct blow when the championship is in full swing. It's a planned change of pace. It's going from surviving to attacking. And if Ferrari executes that improvement correctly, what is today a 25 horsepower disadvantage can disappear in a matter of weeks. Now imagine this, a Ferrari with the best chassis on the grid without the engine limitation. This scenario is what is beginning to worry within Mercedes. Because they know that their current advantage is not structural, is circumstantial. It depends on maintaining that power difference. And the moment it disappears, the fight stops being comfortable and becomes a direct war. So the real story is not that Mercedes is dominating. The real story is that Ferrari is preparing, and he's doing it with surgical precision. But this is where it all gets really dangerous, because it's one thing to have an approved improvement, and quite another to understand the real impact it can have when it hits the track. Ferrari is not working on a simple power gain. It's not just about adding horses, and that's it. What they are preparing is a complete optimization of the performance of the power unit within the new 2026 framework, and that implies something much deeper: energy efficiency, power delivery, integration with a hybrid system. In other words, usable performance in the race. And this point is key, because Ferrari's current problem is not only that it has less power, but how and when it can use it. Their drivers have already made it clear that they cannot squeeze the most out of the car in critical moments, especially in qualifying, where every detail counts. That is, it is not only a disadvantage in numbers, it is a limitation in confidence and execution. Now imagine what happens when you remove that barrier. Suddenly, the pilot can go to the limit. Suddenly, the car no longer has any obvious weak points. Suddenly, Ferrari goes from defending to imposing. And here comes the domino effect that many are not seeing. Because if Ferrari manages to match or even get close enough to the Mercedes engine, the entire balance of the grid automatically changes. We're no longer talking about a specific fight, we are talking about a structural change in the hierarchy. First, because Ferrari has already shown that its car has very clear strengths in cornering and in general behavior. Second, because in conditions where the engine weighs less, they have already been competitive. And third, because this improvement comes at a time when all teams will already have their packages quite defined, which limits the immediate response capacity of their rivals. That is to say, Ferrari not only improves, it improves when others can no longer react easily. And that is devastating. But there is more. Because this situation also introduces a brutal strategic factor within the championship. Until now, Mercedes can manage races with relative peace of mind, knowing that it has an advantage on the straight, in overtaking, in defense. But if that advantage disappears mid-season, your entire approach changes. They can no longer control. They can no longer manage. They have to start taking risks. And in Formula One, when a dominant team is forced to leave its zone of control, that is when the mistakes begin. Ferrari, on the other hand, would be entering its strongest point right at that moment. With more data, with more experience, with a car that is already understood, and with a new weapon that completely changes its competitive capacity. This makes the second half of the season a totally different scenario from the beginning. What today seems like a solid advantage for Mercedes can turn into constant pressure. What today is a limited Ferrari can be transformed into the most complete car on the grid. And this is where the great unknown that defines this entire act appears. What if the upgrade works better than expected? Because if Ferrari not only equals but slightly surpasses Mercedes on certain circuits, the championship not only tightens, it breaks. And then we are no longer talking about a comeback. We are talking about a change of era in the middle of the season. And this is where we reach the most critical point of this whole story, because it is no longer about what Ferrari can do, but about what Mercedes will be able to resist when everything changes. Until now, Mercedes has built its advantage on a very clear foundation, the best engine on the grid. This superiority has allowed them to control races, manage strategies, and above all, impose the pace without having to take great risks. But there is a problem, and that is that all this stability depends on a single factor that is about to disappear. Because the moment Ferrari introduces its improvement, Mercedes loses its greatest weapon. And when that happens, the scenario changes completely. Suddenly, they no longer have room to hide weaknesses. If your car is not the best in aerodynamics, you will be exposed. If your tire management is not perfect, they will suffer. If they make strategic mistakes, there will be no engine advantage to save them. That is, they will go from dominating to having to prove that they are the most complete team. And that's where the real pressure begins. Because while Mercedes enters unknown territory, Ferrari does just the opposite. It reaches its ideal zone. With a car already understood, with data accumulated over half a season, and with an improvement designed specifically to eliminate its only real weakness. This is not a normal evolution. It is a turning point. Now, this is where everything is defined because Mercedes still has a chance, but is much more limited than it seems. Your only real option is to anticipate. Try to extend the lead before Ferrari introduces the improvement. Force the championship in the first half of the year. Force Ferrari to go against the grain. But that involves risks. It involves pushing the car to the limit. It involves exposing yourself to errors. And in such a long championship, that could be very expensive. Meanwhile, Ferrari can play a much smarter game. You don't need to despair. They don't need to win from the beginning. They just need to stay close, enough so that when Canada arrives, the blow will be final. And if that happens, if Ferrari executes well, if the improvement meets what the data promises, so we won't be seeing a simple fight between two teams. We will be seeing how a team goes from pursuer to dominator in terms of races. And that's where everything is decided. Because the big final question is not whether Ferrari can catch up to Mercedes. The real question is, what is Mercedes going to do when she no longer has anything to defend herself with? And in the end, everything fits into a much bigger idea than it seemed at the beginning. Ferrari is not reacting. Ferrari is biding its time. While Mercedes dominates the present, Ferrari is building the future within the same season. They have identified their weakness, they have understood the rules better than anyone else, and they have found a perfect window to attack just when they can do the most damage. It's not a coincidence, it's not luck, it's a millimetric strategic execution. Because this story was never about who starts better. It was about who knows when to hit. Mercedes has done everything right so far, but its advantage has an expiration date. And the moment that engine difference disappears, everything that seems solid can fall apart much faster than anyone imagines. Ferrari, on the other hand, reaches that point with something that cannot be improvised: preparation, clarity, and a defined objective. And if everything goes as expected, we will not see a comeback. We will see a change of power in real time. So now it all comes down to one thing. Canada won't be just another race. It could be the beginning of a new era. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.